We all talk about having high expectations for our students. It's one of those phrases that's everywhere in education. But let's be honest, sometimes it just feels like a buzzword on an evaluation checklist, right? Well, today, we're going to change that. We're going to take high expectations out of the abstract and break it down into 8 practical, concrete things you can actually do in your classroom, starting tomorrow. So let's just get right to it. If someone walked into your room, what would they actually see and hear that just screams high expectations? Because it's way more than a motivational poster on the wall. It's about building an environment where your belief in your students is baked into the DNA of every single lesson. Here's our game plan. First, we're going to define what we're even aiming for. Then, we'll talk about laying the groundwork, setting the stage for all this rigorous work. After that, we'll dive into how to design tasks that really push students' thinking. And finally, we'll cover how to get students to take the reins of their own learning. All right, let's start with the destination. Before we get into all the how-tos, we need a super clear picture of what we're building. What does this high expectations classroom actually look and feel like from a student's perspective? The source material actually gives this place a name, Environment B. And the words here are so important. Think about them: wrestling, owning, persisting. These are active, powerful words. This isn't a quiet, compliant classroom. No, this is a room buzzing with the energy of productive struggle, where the kids are the ones doing the intellectual heavy lifting. So how do we get there? Well, it all starts by laying a really solid foundation. You can't just ask your students to climb a mountain without giving them a map and a compass, right? This is all about making the goal and the path to get there crystal clear. And strategy number 1 is all about transparency. Because, hey, you can't hit a target you can't see. The learning target tells students exactly what they're supposed to learn, and the success criteria tells them exactly what it looks like when they've learned it. It just removes all the guesswork. And here's what that looks like in the wild. Instead of just saying, write a good story, you give them this. It's like a recipe for success. And did you see that little note in parentheses? Co-created? That's the secret sauce. When students help decide what good looks like, they take ownership of it immediately. It's their standard, not just yours. This brings us to a tool that we all use, but maybe not always to its full potential: the rubric. So often, kids only see the rubric after they're done, when you're explaining their grade. The big shift here is to use the rubric as a roadmap during the learning, not just a final judgment. Just look at how powerful this is. The students become detectives. They use the rubric on a sample, which trains their eye to see what quality looks like. Then, and this is the game changer, they turn that same critical eye on their own work. The rubric becomes their personal revision guide. Okay, so we've laid the foundation of clarity. Now we get to the really fun part: designing the work itself. This is all about creating tasks that demand some real intellectual horsepower and move kids beyond just memorizing facts. The level of thinking in our classrooms is pretty much a direct reflection of the questions we ask. If we ask simple, one-word answer questions, that's what we'll get. But if we want deep thinking, our questions have to be the keys that unlock it. They have to ask for more than just the what. They have to ask for the how and the why. Just look at the difference here. The question on the left, it's a quick calculation, there's one right answer, done. But the one on the right, whoa. It demands not just an answer, but a process, a comparison, and a justification. It opens the door for real debate and mathematical reasoning. And here's the big takeaway: learning shouldn't always feel easy. That little bit of discomfort, that spot just beyond what a student can already do easily, that's the sweet spot. That's where growth happens. We call it productive struggle, and our job is to design tasks that live right in that zone. This science task is a perfect example. Instead of giving kids a step-by-step recipe for a lab, the teacher gives them a challenge. The students have to argue about what a fair test is. They have to figure out how to measure things. They even have to analyze their own mistakes. They're not just following directions, they're actually being scientists. This leads us to our final and maybe most important theme. A true high expectations classroom is one where the students are doing most of the thinking and the working. So these next few strategies are all about shifting that cognitive load from our shoulders onto theirs. For students to really own their learning journey, they need to know 3 simple things: where they are right now, where they're going, and what their very next step should be. Building in quick moments for self-assessment and goal setting makes this kind of reflection a daily habit. And the beauty of this is how simple it is. This isn't some huge, complicated activity. It's a quick, little exit slip that gives you, the teacher, a ton of information. The student reflects on their own learning, and you get instant feedback to plan for tomorrow. It's a total win-win. We've all seen group work that isn't really group work at all, right? It's just one student doing all the work while the others kind of hang out. High expectation collaboration is totally different. It is intentionally planned with specific roles and jobs to make sure every single person is engaged and accountable. Here's a perfect example of what that structure can look like. See how each role has a specific thinking job? The questioner's only job is to push for deeper understanding. The connector's job is to build bridges between ideas. This keeps the conversation focused and academic and makes sure everybody is contributing. All right, let's talk about our language. Our words have incredible power in the classroom. The way we frame a difficult task or respond when a student is struggling can either reinforce their doubts or communicate our unshakable belief that they can do hard things. It's a tool we have to be really conscious of. This one sentence is just a powerhouse. First, you validate their feeling. This is tricky, but then you immediately reframe it as a vote of confidence because you're ready for it. It tells them this challenge isn't a punishment, it's a promotion. And this one? Oh, this one can change your entire classroom culture. It gives students permission to slow down, to grapple, to really think, instead of just rushing to be the first one with an answer. It tells them what you truly value. And our final strategy is all about teaching students how to think about their own thinking. We call it metacognition. By asking them questions about their process, we're basically training them to become their own learning coaches, able to monitor their own understanding and figure out what they need to do next. So, we've covered clarity, task design, and student ownership. Let's pull it all together now. If you put all these pieces into practice, what does that environment actually look and sound like? What would an observer see? It really boils down to this. You start by setting a crystal clear stage. Then, you design work that requires deep thinking and productive struggle. You empower students to take the driver's seat in their own learning, and you wrap all of it in language that builds their confidence and self-awareness. These aren't just isolated tricks. They're all part of one big system. And that brings us right back to the most important question. This isn't about theory, it's about what you do tomorrow. After hearing all this, what's one small shift you can make? If someone walked into your room, what's the concrete evidence they would see that proves you believe every single one of your students is capable of incredible things? Because that right there is the real goal.